Tab Notes. This is our monthly LinkedIn newsletter. We started it this summer, and today we're recording a special segment for our Women Leaders section of our newsletter called Breaking Barriers, which I think is appropriate for our guest today. We share stories of resilience and growth and success for women in business and organizations and whatever they're leading. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm very honored to have Jen Schuck here today. Jen is the owner of Caption Pros, an Arizona-based captioning firm. She is an award-winning real-time captioner. She has competed internationally, and she has also won those international competitions. She cares deeply about accessibility and providing resources for those with hearing loss. And so I'm really happy to have her here today. Jen and I have worked together, and our agency at Leverage have worked together since 2017. So that's been 6 years already. We've done a lot of work with her. So I'm excited to interview her today and have her here with us. So Jen, welcome. Thank you so much for being on. I want to ask you a few questions. We just have a few. But my first question is, I just want you to tell us a little bit about yourself outside of work and what you do for business. So what do you like to do outside of work?
Well, that's actually a really hard question. I work a lot. And I work a lot because I truly love what I do. But when I'm not working and I'm not sleeping, I love to travel. And I've been very lucky and very blessed to be able to travel with my work. So I've done a lot of international travel and domestic travel. And usually I would have my steno machine and all of my equipment in tow with me when I was traveling. I'm trying to do a little less of bringing the equipment with, but it's always with me for those emergencies and those last minute requests for clients. But we travel in an RV. And for the last 3.5 years, and with the joy of being able to work from anywhere and having internet access just about anywhere, we can pull over. I can provide accessibility on the go, and then just keep on going down the interstate. So we just love getting to see the country.
Yes, that's great. That's great. Well, tell us a little bit about your path to becoming a real-time captioner. What did you do before that?
Well, so I've been writing on this little silly steno machine for 30 years now. So you can do the math. It's the only thing I've ever done. I have no desire to really do anything else. But I went to court reporting school straight out of high school. And really what I wanted to be was a legal secretary. And then somebody came to my high school and said, you should check out this cool little profession called court reporting. And I did. And I never turned back. And I think that person that gave me that bit of advice was a little bit of an angel to me, sent me down just a wonderful career path. So I was a court reporter for about 11 years. I worked in Chicago. And after working in the city for about 4 years, I then moved to Arizona.
Okay.
And so that was a little bit of a change. Phoenix wasn't quite the metropolitan that it is today, but it definitely has grown since I've been there for the last 25 years. And while I was in Arizona doing court reporting, I also then trained to become a real-time captioner. It was something that I wanted to do, but I didn't know anybody who was a captioner. Back in those days, there wasn't a lot of captioners, and there was definitely no training available. And so the government created a grant and created some training programs, and I applied and I got it. And I can't tell you why I wanted to be a captioner specifically, other than helping people was something that I really wanted to do. I loved being a court reporter because I was young and sitting at tables with powerful attorneys. I just thought it was the greatest thing.
Yeah.
And as I got older, I had just a different lens of how I wanted to use my skills. And so in 2004, I started captioning. And I really can't tell you how I got to the business that I have today. It was just one step after another, meeting wonderful people who continued to mentor me and train me and give me just the most wonderful of opportunities to get where I am today.
That's so great. That's so awesome. So, because I know about your industry and I know the difference, one of my ways of explaining what a steno machine is or what it does is it's machine shorthand, correct? So that would
That's
be
exactly correct.
so when you're doing court reporting, you're using the same steno machine and you're shorthand recording the record of what's going on in court. And it has to be verbatim, correct? So it needs to be word for word. Where captioning is a little bit different. It's like you're trying to be as accurate as possible, but what you're really trying to do is get the gist of what's being said so that it can be turned into captions, correct?
Yeah, so captioning, our goal and the focus of that is providing communication access for whoever we are providing accommodations for.
Right.
So the goal is to give the consumer, whoever is reading the captions, what they need to be able to participate in a meeting, in a class, in an event, whatever the setting is.
Right.
Whereas a court reporter, you're there to make the record.
Right.
So
Right.
the focus is a little different, but what I look like when I'm actually doing my job looks the same, but the brain gymnastics, I call it, is a little bit different.
Yes, it is a little bit different. And you spend a lot of time building up your dictionary inside your steno machine so that you can write those shorthand words, right?
Yeah, so a little bit about how it works is I hear a word and I write it's syllable by syllable.
Okay.
So I break it down syllable by syllable and we write on the machine phonetically. And then I create a database in my software that says, when I write these 3 keys together, I want you to translate it as this word.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to create that database because not everybody is, or not every word is 1 syllable. So we have to create those combinations together. And so when I'm listening, I'm thinking about the word, how does it sound, breaking it down syllable by syllable, making sure I hit the right keys while thinking about and remembering, is it in my dictionary? Because if it's not going to translate, it's not an effective accommodation for whoever's reading the captions. So then I have to type it letter by letter on my steno machine. So there's a lot of mental processing that goes on to break down each word and continue to listen at the same time as they're continuing to speak.
Yes.
50 words a minute.
Yes. And there's a lot right now. I mean, people are talking a lot about AI, right? And about AI and voice captions. And, we all use Siri, we use Alexa, we, do all these different things, right? Where we're using voice technology. But there isn't a replacement for a human captioner because you are able to give speaker IDs and, you're able to acknowledge like certain nuancy things that AI just can't do. And so there's still always going to be a really important need for human real-time captioners, I think, in my opinion.
Yes, there is definitely a place and a role and a lane for automatic speech recognition, which we refer to as ASR.
Mm-hmm.
And some consumers prefer ASR because it is faster. The captions pop on much quicker than they would if I were doing them, albeit my captions are only about 1.5 to 2 seconds behind the spoken word.
Yeah.
But hearing loss is so individualized that what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for the next person.
Right.
So ASR works for some people, depends on their level of hearing loss. Depends their setting. If it's just one-on-one and they just need a little bit of extra help listening, that might work just fine. But if you are in a technical conference that's using multi-syllabic words, one after another, and the ASR is repetitively wrong, it's not an effective accommodation. There's not communication access in that setting. So it seems to be more often that our requests are for the higher profile, more technical type of events, type of meetings, where there's 20 plus people in a room. And that's really what I focus on. I feel like Caption Pros is a little bit unique in the services that we provide, in that we do really technical, high profile events.
Yeah.
That is above what most captioners do. We also provide verbatim transcripts at the end of the day. So we provide hybrid services. We provide you communication access, but we also provide those verbatim transcripts that people need at the end of the day. Not in a legal setting, but they might need it for marketing and communications or to review whatever was said. Maybe there's a test at the end of the day. Whatever their needs are. So.
Okay. And so on the advocacy and accessibility side, I wanted to make sure I had you talk a little bit about your work in that space, but also a little bit about the nonprofit group that you're a part of, the Global Alliance of Speech to Text Captioning.
Yeah, so I was a founder of the Global Alliance of Speech to Text Captioning because I felt like there was a need for an organization to do advocacy work that solely focused on captioning and the people that use captioning. Mm-hmm. And that just didn't exist in our profession.
Right.
And so we started in 2019. I still say we, even though I served as secretary, treasurer, and chairperson for 2 years. I am now currently immediate past chair. So I try to refrain from using we because I'm stepping back, but it's still very personal to me in this role and doing the advocacy work. I have never felt more empowered isn't quite the right word, more validated, really, that what the Global Alliance is doing and the work that we're doing is right on track, because the general public, doesn't know that captioning is done by a human or can be done by a human.
Right.
They don't know how it gets done, and they don't know where to turn to if they've had a request.
Right.
Most people don't know the difference between captioning and ASL. Why would you use captioning versus American Sign Language?
Right. Not everybody, people that have hearing loss later in life oftentimes don't learn ASL. So
that's exactly correct. And so a lot of people don't know what resources are available to them, what accommodations are available to them. They may not know, like you said, for late deafened adults, that they can get a telephone for free that has captions on it for when they make telephone calls. So that's the kind of work that Global Alliance does, is education of the general public, education to consumers who don't know what's available to them, education and networking to captioners to enhance their skills. Mm-hmm. But we encompass all methods of captioning because it's can be done via stenographic machine like I do. It can be done via voice writing, which is equal effective communication access. It's just done in a different way.
Delivered in a different method. Mm-hmm.
And then there is also the ASR, which again has a lane, has a role to play depending on the individual and who is using it. So the Global Alliance represents all methods, the profession as a whole. And like I said, I've never been more validated when I go and give a presentation and the feedback that we get.
That's great. That's such good work. It's so important because there are, especially I think we saw the very large gap in accessibility for people with hearing loss who are deaf during COVID. I mean, I like everybody working remote, how do they join Zoom meetings without captions? All of these things, these accommodations there. A lot of people who have hearing loss oftentimes will, they lip read, or they have different things that they do to cope or get by when accessibility isn't there for them. And so we really saw the big gap in that accessibility space when COVID happened. And so I'm sure that you saw a lot of requests come in during that time.
The pandemic was a very challenging time for people with hearing loss because, like you said, a lot of people lip read. And when you have a mask on, you no longer see the lips. Right. And so you might as well just turn your ears off because they are just unable to determine what is being said. So that was definitely a challenge. And then everybody came into this remote world. And how do they provide accessibility? How do they receive accessibility? Everybody went online. So
Right.
Internet latency was an issue. Speakers was an issue. The new phrase of "you're on mute." I mean, that still happens today.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I was very, very busy during the pandemic,
Mm.
and it was it was a good thing. It was a great thing. I think it highlighted the need for accessibility for everybody.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and I almost feel a little bit as the world is opening back up, people are going back in person now, that we forget that those lessons were learned during
Right.
that period of time.
Right.
Accessibility doesn't go away just because you're in person.
Exactly. Right.
So, so we're still, the education is never ending.
Yeah.
We're never going to educate the entire world, but we're sure going to try.
Just keep working at it. Well, and that's why your work with the Global Alliance is so important too, because that education piece and the advocacy work that you guys are doing is important. So I love
So
that. That's great. So a few last questions. Can you discuss any future plans or goals you have for your business or just your personal work? What you'd like to be doing next?
yeah, well, I think you kind of touched on it. I really am passionate about doing advocacy work, telling people what is available, how I do my job. It's really such a mystery to people.
Yeah.
Nobody thinks twice when they turn on television and the captions are on. Let's say if you go to a restaurant or a bar,
Right.
they don't
Right.
think twice about how they got there.
Right.
So when I tell people, well, that's what I do, they look at me and go, well, how does that happen?
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
haven't quite gotten it down to this elevator speech, but I'm working on it. So
We'll work on that.
that's definitely a goal, to try to figure out how I explain what I do, in 2 minutes or less.
Yeah.
It really depends on how much time we have and how
Yes.
interested you
Right.
seem to be in what it is that I do. So
Yeah.
advocacy is definitely something. And I'm wanting people to know that just because you're checking a box and saying you're providing accessibility, but you're not really providing the effective means to getting to that end
Yeah.
goal, that there's more to it than that, than just
Right.
checking a box or turning on a particular solution. So
Yeah.
advocacy is definitely something that I enjoy doing and want to do more of in the future.
I love that. I love that about you, Jen. What key takeaway would you like to leave with our readers and viewers today?
Well, I mean, I am no stranger to budgets. Everybody has a budget when they're putting an event together.
Mhm.
I get it. But the whole point of doing an event or a class or anything that you're doing is to send a message, right? Or to educate somebody. And if that message is not received, then you've wasted your time, money, and
Right.
effort.
Right. Exactly.
And so just adding accessibility to that and planning for it at the front end of your event, not at the very last second where
Right.
somebody
Right.
comes.
Not an afterthought, but the thing you put on the list that's a priority. Mhm.
Yeah, you just plan for it. You build it into the budget. There are ways to get funding for it. You can ask for sponsors.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to have their name out there, especially when they're promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. And
Mhm.
I think if you really look at the impact that you're going to have versus how much that budget line item is actually going to be, it's probably smaller than you think it is.
Right.
That
Right.
that's where I want people to remember, plan for it,
Right.
and then build it into the budget. Because when you come at that last hour, and because you've had an attendee who said, oh, by the way, I need communication access for your
Right.
event tomorrow, everybody's scrambling.
Right.
That's way more money than if you would have planned for it, because I can tell you it is not nearly as difficult as you think that it is. It's just one phone call.
Right. Yep. Exactly. I love that. Well, and I would like to, we'll put your website up on the banners too, so that we can have people find you easily. You can reach out to Jen at captionpros.net, and she has a lot of information on her site about her services and what she provides. So I encourage you to reach out to her. She is the best of the best when it comes to real-time captioning. So thank you so much, Jen. I really appreciate that you took time to talk with me today. It's great when we can have these conversations, like, and just put different subjects out there, and have people learn about something that they maybe didn't know anything about before. So if you're watching and you want to join our community, you can find us on LinkedIn. It's Leverage Lab Notes. We have a newsletter and you can subscribe there. So we'll put a note in our show description so you can look that up later. But thank you so much, Jen. I really appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.